call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Before we start our business, I would like to take a moment to ask for a moment of silence. Since we've last met, we've lost two members of our community who have contributed very, very much to our community through being on town council, board of ed, town attorney. Last week we lost Marie Herbst, and today we lost Hal Cummings. So I just think we should take a moment of silence for them. Thank you very much. And before we get started, I'd like to also thank Mr. Kopek for being here tonight, a member of our town council. And we would love to begin with our presentation from the Girl Scouts. Mrs. Lee and Mrs. Halpern.
We are in the process of earning our Silver Award for Girl Scouts. The Silver Award is the highest award you can earn as a middle school Girl Scout. We need everyone's help. We would like to reduce the amount of trash from our school district.
During our research, we learned a lot about food waste, composting, and trash in our country. The average person produces 4.3 pounds of waste a day.
Americans generate enough trash to fill 2 baseball stadiums from top to bottom every day.
You can compost about 2/3 of what gets thrown out every day. By composting organic materials such as food waste, paper, and wood, we are making our world healthier.
All this waste is expensive. It costs us billions and billions of dollars every year. According to the 2014-2015 Vernon town budget, we spend almost $500,000 on trash disposal every year. Composting might be a way to reduce that cost.
If it goes into a dumpster, it ends up in a landfill. The food in this picture could have been donated or composted to prevent it from becoming yet more trash.
This is a video about how Disney World composts food waste. Harvest Farm in Ellington is part of the same company that is shown in this video.
All right, finish your dinner or else. That's what Mom said, right? Among other things. But these days, not finishing dinner could keep the lights on. New at 10, our consumer reporter Chris Camara is going to open the closed doors now to show us a new twist on trash versus treasure and the magical place. It is being tested.
Garbage in.
It's a win-win.
Power out.
This is really unique.
Trucks deliver a flood of food.
6,000 miles, 10,000 pounds.
Most of us would describe this slurry as disgusting. A company called Harvest Power calls this mess fuel.
That's beautiful material.
Through an ingenious process,
We pump it to a mix tank.
the leftovers you see here
We have chicken, we have rice, we have orange peels.
will be converted into electricity.
None of the food will go to waste.
This load of surplus slop comes from someplace unexpected. Trucks are labeled Reedy Creek Improvement District. That's a corporate code for a household name.
Our largest customer is Disney.
Walt Disney World makes memories and millions of meals. But those who join the Mickey Mouse Club aren't aren't always members of the Clean Plate Club. Dirty dishes pile up. So right under our noses, tons of residue from breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Around 50 to 60 tons every single day.
Now leave Walt Disney World for Harvest Power.
We're part of the infrastructure. Most people don't really know what's going on in the infrastructure.
Just a mile drive from Fantasyland.
Disney is all around us.
And behind the scenes, an avalanche of excess food flows 7 days a week.
Sometimes 8 days a week.
It's pumped into million-gallon tanks.
Trying to make it look like Epcot?
No.
Grub degrades over a month. Microbes transform food into fumes of methane.
After our leftovers percolate for 25 days, the resulting gas is piped to 2 huge engines.
Twin turbines crank out an incredible amount of power.
At full capacity, we'll produce enough energy that could power 16,000 homes every year.
But that's not all. The unconsumed pulp is dried out and piled into trucks. It's now fertilizer bound for farms.
To grow more food.
Food that could come full circle should it wind up at Disney and ultimately back here.
Over and over and over again.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Harvest Power is mimicking the way animals digest food.
We borrowed heavily from nature.
This company is confident its recipe for turning forgotten food into power, fertilizer, and reclaimed water
Food is mostly water.
is a model for making the most of food scraps globally.
This is the beginning, I think, of a big trend.
It's the real Tomorrowland.
It's sustainable.
Off limits, but on track to change your world. Starting within Walt Disney World.
It makes sense.
Chris Kimura, Fox 13 News.
We weighed the trash from our cafeteria after each lunch weigh for 4 days in April. The results were stunning. The amount of trash created is incredibly high.
Here are the totals for each lunch weigh for the 4 days that we weighed trash. The total for all 4 days was 830.2 pounds. That's as much as the weight of 4 baby elephants. This represents how many trash bags are thrown away after 1 day of lunch. This doesn't even include any of the trash from the building.
The daily average of the lunch trash based on our weighing of the trash is 208 pounds. The average for a week is 1,038 pounds. The average for the school year is 37,359 pounds. That means over a student's 3 years at BCMS, students have thrown out in the cafeteria at lunch 112,077 pounds of trash. That's a lot of trash.
Even just a couple of plastic sandwich bags and AppCore adds up. That'd be about 5 ounces the weight of a smartphone. We are still making 172.43 pounds of trash per person over 3 years at BCMS.
After we presented all this information to the students at 3 grade level assemblies, we were ready to begin composting. We set up bins in the cafeteria and labeled them for trash, recycling, and composting. The compost included leftover food, milk and milk cartons, straw wrappers, popsicle sticks, paper towels, and napkins. We were there to help with the separating process. We weighed the separated items and compared it to the data from the week before. The collected food waste and other compostable items went to Harvest Power in Ellington to be composted.
We stood behind the trash cans and helped people sort their lunch leftovers.
We used the money we earned selling Girl Scout cookies to buy special compostable bags made of corn so that we can weigh and transport the food waste.
After we weighed the food, it went to Harvest Power.
They churned our food into their mulch piles.
All this future compost was transported in Mrs. Lee's mom van. This is not a good long-term solution, especially for Mrs. Lee and her family.
We went from 830.2 pounds of trash in our first week to 141.5 pounds of trash during our composting week. We recycled 41.9 pounds of cans, bottles, and plastic, and 593.1 pounds went to Harvest Power in my mom's van to be composted. This was an 83% weight reduction in our trash.
We have some suggestions of ways to reduce our trash and raise our green awareness.
Vernon School should become part of the Connecticut Green League Schools. They have resources to help us become more environmentally friendly.
We should replace styrofoam trays with washable, reusable trays or with paper trays that can be composted.
We should actually start composting regularly at our schools and contract with a company to haul away our compost. Harvest Power will do that. We hope that you have learned something and will help us take action on this very important issue.
Special thanks to Mrs. Lee, Mrs. Halpern, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Mago, Mr. Gelada, all of our teachers, especially the cafeteria duty teachers, the custodial staff, our parents, and the persuasive power of Girl Scout cookies.
If you have any questions, we are happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. That was really enlightening. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Fisher?
That was a really, really wonderful presentation, and it does open our eyes to how much waste is out there. You went and you were teaching the students how to separate their lunches. Did you notice during the week that you were teaching them that you saw a difference and they were able to do it without too much guidance? Okay.
Yeah.
How did the students feel about, separating their lunch and stuff? Give me a little insight on how things went.
At first, I think they didn't really like it because they had to, touch it, and it was kind of gross. But after a while, they kind of got used to it. They were kind of already ready to sort it when they got to the trash cans. And after a week, some students actually asked why we weren't composting anymore, which was cool.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like they liked it, the idea. Now, have you? I know that at our high school, the agricultural students have looked into doing a large composting on site. I think they put a grant application in to get a large composter. That would be a place to look to combine with, so that we could possibly do that with for all our schools. That would be really great. And I'd like to see you continue on with this project and push forward so that Vernon schools can be a little greener. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions for them? It was a wonderful presentation and very informative. A little disgusting, but very informative. But thank you so much. Okay, now we will move on to our regular business and the consent agenda. Mr. Wolf,
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
second? Second. Bush?
Second.
Anybody like to pull Mr. Jensen?
I'd like to pull item E.
Which one?
E.
Okay, anyone else? Mrs. Arndt?
I have a question about item C, please.
And anyone else? I would like to pull item F. So, let's vote on all the rest of the items in the consent agenda. And if I try to read the letters, I'll probably mess it up, but A, B, D, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Mr. Stanton, item E.
My only concern about item E is how it relates to the agricultural education program. It talks a lot about how the animals have to be removed from the classroom, and that the student with the particular allergies has the final right to stay in the classroom. In ag ed, that it could be the class. So I guess that's my only concern, is how that would apply in that situation.
I think if that was the situation, the student probably would not be taking that particular course, since that's a requirement of the course. This policy is really meant for the guinea pig in the classroom, or the those kinds of things. A classroom pet, which is not discouraged, which is discouraged. We certainly want our students to learn from animals. There are lessons we can learn, and to also include students' rights with, in connection with service animals, because we have service animals of all types and can have them in our schools, and the student with the allergies has the right to be there as well. So I understand your concerns. I don't know that the GOAG program would have that particular problem.
Is there any way we could add a statement to that effect in the proposed policy? I understand that it seems unlikely that it would ever come up, but the first time it does, our policy says X, and now we're sort of beholden to it. So even if it's just something simple, like if the focus of the class is an animal-based class, then however we want to phrase it out. I just would hate for that to be the policy and then have something actually happen where that puts us behind the wall.
Do you believe that, I think that paragraph 2 might cover that in that policy. It's on page 19 of the consent agenda.
Yeah, I guess that gives the principal the right to establish the conditions. That's fine. I wasn't reading it that particular way, but I understand what you're saying. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion for item E? Mrs. Bush?
I move to accept item E from the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Mr. Stansel? Any further questions or comments, discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, Mrs. Arndt, item C.
Looking at page 11, number 6, I just want a clarification about the right to monitor all employee use of district computers and other electronic devices. Is it other district electronic devices, or is it personal devices? The first one says district, the second one doesn't. I just looking for clarification.
If I may, because there's no comma, I'm thinking it's district computers and other electronic devices.
So that would mean
So
district.
it's district, and then the whole thing is district, so it would be district devices.
Okay.
Yeah, they're grouped together so that way. And it's under the category of rules concerning district sponsors.
Right, and I know that there are repetitions of language in different places. Just wanted to be sure that I understood that.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve that? Mrs. Bush, second.
Move to approve item C on the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Mrs. Russell? Okay, any further questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor? Unanimous. And I pulled item F because what's in our packet tonight, page 21 and 22, is not the policy that was handed out at our last meeting. Was the first reading of this policy. And in your yellow folders is the policy that we were given last time to read and hopefully approve tonight. Yeah, 21 and 22. So in your packet you have the corrected version, which was handed out as the first reading at our last board meeting. Questions on that? So
You want us to approve the draft in our packet and not the one in our...
correct. So the one that's in our packet is not, it doesn't even start off as a policy. It's missing appropriate information. Anyone want to make a motion? Mrs. Bush?
I move. Okay, I move to accept items F from the consent agenda.
Well, from the new policy handed out to us in our packets tonight.
Okay, that would be absolutely. Okay.
Is there a second? Mr. Gould?
Second.
Any other comments, concerns, discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Are you in favor?
Just took me a minute to read it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, I didn't get everybody's vote, so all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, now we'll move on to items 3.0, Secretary's Report. Opportunity for the Board of Education to add or delete agenda items. Does anybody want to add or delete an agenda item? Okay, item 3.2, Rockville High School Student Representative. We do not have any students here tonight. So we'll move on to item 4.0, Community Forum. Opportunity for comments on agenda items, potential future agenda items, and general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? If so, please come forward and state your name and address.
Monica Barden,
It's on.
36 Quarry Drive, Vernon, Connecticut. I know it's been a tough budget year. I see we have a lot of cuts coming towards our teachers, which makes me very sad. But I understand our enrollment has gone down. The one position that does bother me is that we're cutting teachers, yet we're still trying to implement a full-time athletic director at that amount of money. It doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it should continue at this point in time with the budget the way it stands, it should continue to be a part-time position. Even if it was a full-time position, I don't believe that we should be paying someone $120-something thousand when we are cutting so many teachers. If these cuts continue to the high school and the middle school, I'm worried about our reputation again. We have such good momentum going right now in the middle school and the high school. People are not leaving for magnets as fast as they were a few years ago, especially for the middle school. I understand an 8th grade team is already eliminated, and the next team team might be a 7th grade team, it makes me worry. I have a 6th grader. I worry about what 7th and 8th grade will be like for her if more teachers are cut at the middle school. And I have a 9th grader, so I do worry about the classes also cut at the high school. I know you've all given a lot of consideration, and do the best you can. I just hope that we can find other ways to cut money with the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board this evening? Okay, we will move on to item 5.0, personnel. 5.1, appointment of supervisor of special education. Dr. Connell.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Fisher. Last Thursday evening was the second round of interviews. Mr. Burt conducted those interviews. I was unable to be there. I know Mrs. Buell was there as well, so she can probably give a better overview. We did, as the board requested, we did an outside search. We posted immediately. We interviewed all the candidates who applied, and were quite delighted when we ended up with the exact same candidate. So we were delighted to have Mr. Giansanti come forward as that candidate. Mrs. Buell, if you would like to reintroduce Mr. Giansanti to the board, and then I will be asking for you to appoint him. He's outside of the administrators union, coming in from the teachers union. So, Mrs. Buell.
Thank you, good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Todd Giansanti. He has worked in the system for 7 years. He's been a guidance counselor at Vernon Center Middle School for all those years. This year he has been a half-time, a .55 guidance counselor and a .45 special ed supervisor at the secondary level. He actually did work with Roger Wiley for some time in preparation last year to transition into this position, and he's done a fabulous job working with our families and with our students. He's very well respected and has a great working relationship with staff, students, and families. So it is my pleasure to have him on board full-time in the department as a K-12 special ed supervisor. So I'm very pleased that he was chosen by the board to move forward as the candidate for this position. So I'm very pleased to introduce Todd Giansanti.
I recommend to the board, it was not in your packet obviously because the interviews were Thursday evening, the packet goes out on Thursday. And so that interview had not been conducted. You had received Mr. Giansanti's resume in your packet about a month ago as well. And I do certainly wholeheartedly recommend Todd Giansanti to the role of Special Education Supervisor K-12 for the Vernon Public Schools.
Mrs. Bush had her hand up first.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the appointment of Todd Giansanti as Supervisor of Special Education as recommended by Dr. Conway as of July 1st, 2015. I'd appreciate a second. I'd like to speak on the motion.
Mr. Kalina, second. Okay, Mrs. Bush.
I attended the interview Thursday evening, and I have to say I was quite impressed with Mr. Giansanti, and I feel that absolutely the best candidate has been chosen for the position, and I encourage everyone else to vote and approve this.
I would second that. That was, Mr. Giansanti was very impressive, and I think he's going to be a wonderful asset to our special education program. Anyone else have anything to say, ask, any questions? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Welcome in your new position. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay, next item is 6.0 curriculum update on the standard-based report card. Mr. Bird is not here.
Mr. Bird is not here. but he did provide you with a sample, a large sample in your packet. And then he did a mock report card that should be in your folder this evening and put in grades. So he had also included the old report card so that you could see the difference, whereas you might get a, reading might be a G. In this, you know very specifically what those areas are that the student needs to learn and needs to grow. Mr. Burt had wanted to get these, this is still a draft, obviously, wanted to get these things to you on a regular basis, and so had asked if this could be included on our agenda so that you could continually look at the old, the new, ask questions, and give feedback. This is still a work in progress. The report card changed a little bit this year, but that's because we have a new student database, so that it had to look different, it couldn't be identical. And so it was kind of a transition year. But this is what it looks like right now. You can see in science, social studies, art and music, or science and social studies anyway, we don't have the standards yet for the state of Connecticut. And so it will be longer at that point. So I think report cards are going to be very different as time goes on. It looks like Mr. Testa and Mrs. Vidjashaker were unable to make it this evening as well. So we're very happy to place this on your next agenda for questions, if you would like.
Do they have a question tonight? That maybe if we don't have the answer, we can tackle it along. Mrs. I.
I did have a couple of questions. You prefer that we ask them rather than just put it on the next agenda?
It's definitely not my area of expertise, and I will try, and Mrs. Buell will try as well.
I'm looking at page 4, exceeding district standards. And I think I understand that the student is marked, or they get the score based on where they should be at achieving the standard at the end of the trimester. So if a student is achieving a 4 at some point during the year, they've achieved the standard and exceeded the standard, is there a curriculum change for that child so they can continue to achieve a different standard?
There absolutely should be. That's what should happen, and that's what the NWEA allows us to demonstrate to parents more clearly, that you can then see in NWEA, which is not part of this report card, that the student is performing, a 5th grader is performing in the middle of 7th grade at that point. And so the student will receive all 4s on the report card. The report card won't mean much, but that NWEA report 3 times a year will mean a lot to the parent, to the student, to show where the child is. So I think we are going to have to eventually adjust for that and see, do we then give the child the 7th grade report card? Well, they're not doing the same thing. So I think, as I said, it's a real work in progress. And maybe we'll all end up with very individual, you know that we're using the parent portal, and so as we flesh that out, it might be that the parent sees all 4s because the child is way above grade level, but is more interested in looking at the standards they're working on. And for us to produce a piece of paper for the parent, it wouldn't make much sense at that point. So this is uncharted territory for all of us.
I understand it, but it seemed to be, I could see where the report card would become pretty meaningless.
Correct.
Okay. So
absolutely, I agree.
Okay. And the only other comment I have is relative to page 2, when these are, I think this is what Mr. Burt is working on, sending home to parents to help them understand the report card.
Or do a Q&A online, or both.
Okay.
Yes.
And I realize in terms of helping people understand, he defined assessment as both formative and summative. I would suggest that would have very little meaning to a parent.
Okay.
It's my suggestion.
I had asked before what to have some changes made, and I don't see any here tonight. So that was my first question: what changes were made based on the difference between last time's presentation and this one. So I take it there were none. So this is the copy of the same document. Is that right?
In this particular document, I don't know how many changes were made, but it was actually, this was not a mock-up. This is online. Mr. Burt actually input all of these through, made up a student, and input them all through our student database. So this is, while a dummy, it was a live document. So he was able to input it as a teacher, a mock teacher, and to do this, to show what it might look like.
Okay. Thank you. I had asked about the potential of having a focus group take a look at this and utilize it, and I don't know what the status of that suggestion is at this time.
I'm not sure.
I'd like to see this run by a group of parents before it's implemented. The comparison with the prior report card illustrates one interesting change, and that is the elimination of any analysis of handwriting. The entire category of handwriting is gone. I didn't know that we had decided to get out of the handwriting business.
Vernon Public Schools has not taught handwriting in the 5 years that I've been here, and I'm sure it's been many years prior to that. However, we did invest in, the program is called Handwriting Without Tears, and we are starting that discussion of how we can teach writing again, handwriting, to students without taking valuable classroom time for that.
Well, curiously, it's recently this document that is dated 2012 still includes the reporting of how they're doing in handwriting, and that wasn't 5 years ago. So I would like it not to disappear from our radar screen. Since the staff members aren't present, I'm not going to go over my several observations here about some of the particular questions. I'll save that for another time, but just so you know, I have several. There's some cases, there are terms here that I don't think I understand very well, and I don't know that the average parent would necessarily understand them. There are also duplications here in one case. Punctuation, capitalization, and that is found in 2 different places. I don't know why that would be done. And then my general concern is the amount of time that the assessments are going to take on each of these, and the trade-off with teaching time that would otherwise would be lost as a result of the additional assessments happening. There's no real way to quantify that at this point. It just seems that it would be substantial. And I don't know that that's a good thing.
I'm not sure I understand completely. There is not an assessment for each one of these things. These would be done just the same as reading is assessed by a teacher.
Well, I guess that's the question. How many formative and summative assessments would be done for each of those various standards? I mean, nobody's told me how much of that and how much that would equate to from the teacher's day. And assuming that it's a zero-sum game, that means there's a corresponding decrease in teaching time if we're spending the time to do the assessments.
The teachers assess continuously. Formative assessment is done all the time.
But aren't you going to have to document your assessment?
They do.
Of each and every one?
They absolutely do.
So that would be a separate assessment for each of these?
They do it right now.
To what extent?
To the extent that they can identify whether the student is meeting that or not. So this is a young one, so knows and applies the sounds of the letters. They have to do that right now. Individually with students, collectively with students, and small groups with students. So there's no additional additional time that would be used for assessment. But now they will be telling parents what the specific area is that the student has not mastered yet. Rather than just saying reading there a letter F, they can say in reading there a letter F, however, they still need to work on describing characters and setting. Parents never had that information before.
All right, well, I'll go over the specific items when staff is here that can answer a specific question on the content here. And I'd also appreciate their comments further about the change in the handwriting assessments. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Russell?
I would like to know why and what's the logic behind the handwriting. I know that it's been 5 years. I know it's not you. I just want to know what the logic is that we don't offer that to our students.
Mrs. Bush probably is better since she's an elementary teacher, would probably be able to answer that better than I. But I've actually heard that some people just call it calligraphy. That it's not something that has a lot of worth in today's day and age. Students are all typing. They're using electronic devices. They're using electronic signatures. They're paying, adults are paying bills online. So there is not as much need for handwriting. And it does take up a lot of instructional time as well. I don't know. I would defer through Mrs. Fisher to Mrs. Bush if she would like to add to that.
Mrs. Bush, you want to?
I can talk about that because I teach first grade, and that's one of the most important grades for teaching handwriting. It's not that it's totally not taught. We do go through and we revisit the letters. And when we're doing that, we talk about the shape of them and how they're formed, but we don't actually go through any process of, going through like a handwriting book and teaching them to write the letters. We talk about it within our writing instruction as well, because if a reader cannot read your handwriting, then they would not be able to enjoy your work. So it's all taught within a context as well, but not formally, and we're not assessing it in that way. But it's not that we're saying, oh, write any way you want. We talk about how to hold your pencil, we talk about all that. It's just not something we do formally. I think that at this level, we're also moving into the concept of typing. And in first grade, we spend some time in the computer lab using a typing program that is teaching them, because by third grade, they're having to input characters to be able to be successful on an assessment. And I can tell you that in first grade, they're pretty good at knowing where all the letters are. They're making strides in being successful on some of the, we use Type to Learn 4 in where I teach. And it's not that it's not being taught, it's not being taught formally, and it's not being assessed formally. It's being taught within the context of a day. And so a lot of things are integrated now. A lot of science is integrated, social studies. We even integrate writing and reading into our math. So it's there, it's just not formally taught and assessed.
Mr. Stanton? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Russell hasn't finished.
I just want to make a comment that I'm with Mr. Kemp, and I'd be glad when we can get some answers with that, because I think it's like oranges and apples, my personal opinion. And I really do want some answers, because on the other hand, you see other students that, and you see other school systems that's doing that, and the children are doing very well. When you go to the doctor's office, they don't ask for, some of them ask for computerized, but most of the time you have to have a signature somewhere. And along the line, I think students need to know how to write properly, how to write cursive properly. So thank you. I just wanted to make that comment.
My question was about cursive, because I don't believe we teach cursive at all anymore, do we?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. So, admittedly, I can barely write cursive myself anymore, so I mean, I don't know that I have room to complain. I spend all my time on a keyboard too. But you do wonder, you know, if kids can't sign their own name in cursive, then it's been a societal standard for God knows how many decades now. So it's an interesting place.
Well, to that end, I wanted to ask Laura, you said you go over with them the shapes of the letters. Do you go over the shapes in printing or the shapes in cursive or both?
In first grade, we do printing and manuscript. So they don't introduce it even in the standards. They'll start a little bit in second grade, but it wouldn't be formally used if introduced. It was never introduced till third grade.
Anybody else have one? Sorry.
I'd just like to request that this return to our agenda when Mr. Bird or somebody else, it sounds like we have more discussion to have, if that's all right. And I would just comment too that my age will show when we don't write to each other and now we don't talk to each other either. We're doing it all electronically. Sad day for me.
I'll send you a letter.
Okay, any other questions about the rough draft of the report card? Okay. Move on to general business 7.0. 7.1, first reading of new board policy 9020, bylaws of the Vernon Board of Education, public statements. Does anyone have any comments or suggestions for changes or anything that this is being brought forward? We will vote on this at our next meeting.
I have a question about the language. I'm wondering what an active comprehensive program, blah, 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 for the prompt dissemination of information is. I'm in the second paragraph about,
Sorry.
we don't have anything in place, is that correct? Does this say that we will, or?
It indicates that we will promptly, we will have a plan and a program to disseminate information about decisions made at all board meetings. Is that?
That's what I'm wondering. That's something we don't have, and this policy will force that establishment?
No, we post all the decisions as soon as Mrs. Buchanan gets them ready. So we are doing that now.
The minutes are posted.
And all the decisions are posted first, and then all the minutes are posted.
Mr. Stansky?
Well, we also had that one communications committee meeting,
Yeah,
of which we never had a follow-up or report back on the actions that we asked for coming out of that committee meeting. So might be, if we're going to adopt this policy, then perhaps we should reestablish that committee as a more regularly meeting entity.
Well, to conduct an active and comprehensive program sounds more than just posting minutes. And I wondered if that was the intent of this policy, is to have something active and comprehensive moving forward to disseminate information into the community. It's just, get it.
The words that it says disseminate information about decisions, this is things that are occurring in this board. I mean, this is the place where we make our decisions. And the official document of our decisions is our minutes. That is the documentation that we use to disseminate what we did. And that's why, it's a matter of public record as soon as it's reported.
I'm not disagreeing at all, Mr. Hool. I'm saying that this policy doesn't say that. This policy says that we're going to conduct an active and comprehensive program. And if all we need to do is post our minutes, what else is this for? That's all.
So we could change the language and just say we will post the minutes with a recording or to disseminate the information made at board meetings.
That would be my suggestion, unless this language, the purpose of this language is to do something else.
I don't believe it is. So to make it clearer, we could say, superintendent of schools will work with members of the Board of Education to post.
To promptly post Board of Education minutes.
And promptly disseminate information about decisions, etc. Yeah. Bring this to policy on the 5th. Okay, yes. It's the first reading. Yeah, all right. Okay. Anyone else have anything to add to that policy? All right, we will bring it back to the policy committee on the 5th. Item 7.2, state technology grant update. Dr. Conlon.
This is just a brief FYI because several board members had asked over the course of the winter about the technology grant that we had for which we had put in an application with the state. You see the letter that we received was just very short. We truly have no idea what the error was. It was all at the state level, so they had to issue a no award ruling for the entire grant. We do anticipate that they will repost the request for proposals and that we will resubmit that again. We're very hopeful. That one contained all of our wireless for the elementary schools, so we are very, very hopeful. We were truly counting on that. So we do expect that it will be, but we had been told originally that the awards would be made in May, and I didn't want the board to be outside of that loop and knowing what was going on.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Kemp?
Oh, that's fine. I want to make sure that our area legislators are also in the loop in a consistent manner. And as a consequence of that concern, I prepared a motion for your consideration. And it really is talking to the area state legislators when we're going to apply for a state grant, and our congressmen when we're going to apply for a federal grant. So it reads like this. I move the superintendent ensure that at a minimum, area state legislators are advised of board grant applications sought from the state of Connecticut and when from the federal government, our second congressional congressman. I appreciate a second, after which I'd be happy to answer further questions.
Second.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Kemp?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. If someone has a question as to, you know, what I meant when I used the term, for instance, at a minimum, just to say area legislators or the second congressional congressman doesn't have to be the extent of it. If other legislators are contacted, that's fine. If other congressmen in Connecticut are contacted, or senators, that's fine too. So, but at a very minimum, our congressmen here and our 3 area legislators here should be made aware of any grant, either state or federal, that we're seeking.
Mr. Stanton?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I guess I'm puzzled we never thought of it before.
Is it your suggestion that those legislators will have some influence in the grant decision making?
Gosh, I hope so.
Mr. Hool?
You done?
Yeah.
Okay, just when the superintendent sends this letter on behalf of the board, I'm assuming she's going to do this on behalf of the board, and they can, she's doing this at the request of the board. And it's us who's reaching out to them, not
Yes.
just the superintendent.
Wait, you're not asking for a letter to be sent to our legislators right now? You're just saying whenever
this
we
is
apply for a grant?
Whenever we apply,
Yeah.
it's
This
on
is an
behalf of
ongoing
us.
process. Whenever we have a grant that we're after, that our advocates really are made aware of it so that they can in fact advocate. If we win it, fine. If we don't win it, but we want to take advantage of them as resources whenever possible.
Mrs. Bush?
I think it's a great idea. Many times I will make contact with them and just tell them that, yes, we're seeking this grant, and could you check on it? We'd like to get your support, but this would be a mainstream way to do it, where right away when the application's put in, there's no second guessing it, we just have it in there. So I think Mr. Kemp has a very good idea to make it automatic, because I can tell you that if they know about it, they can go to where they need to check on it, and they can, just having a conversation might help us in a way. So I fully support that.
Mr. Will?
Could I suggest a friendly amendment that when this letter is drafted and sent, that a copy get into our board packet information section so that we each have a copy of who it was sent to, so the letter when it was sent. That way there, we do want to do those kind of follow-ups. We all are aware of it. Friendly amendment?
I could just add a comment after congressperson and comma, copies of which shall be included in board packets. Second or agree?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Wish I had the wording right here.
Okay, any other questions on the technology grant? Okay, we'll move on to item 7.4, discussion, 7.3, report from the Board of Ed Ad Hoc Athletic Committee. Mr. Linton.
I have 3 items that we were discussing in the past, and a brief update of those. One of them is at BCMS, the gym matting. Dr. Purcell and Mr. Harrison have found funding to replace the mats in the large gym. Start date for this project will be in about a month. The 2 next items are at the high school. So far, the ice machine is still in the budget. Hopefully, when the new ice machine arrives, the room where the ice machine is stored will be cleaned and painted. And the last update we have is again at the high school, is the weight room. A company called New England Fitness has been contacted to redesign the area. Funding for this project, once the design is submitted, will be through donations. This will be coming from a newly formed Rockville High School Sports Club. And then lastly, we had our ad hoc meeting last Wednesday, I believe it was the 22nd. We'll have meetings from that, minutes rather, from that meeting next time we meet. But one of the things that was discussed, we will be in the process of drafting a letter to be submitted to Vernon Public Works to gather information on cost analysis for renovation work on the upper, which is the southern fields, which includes varsity baseball, varsity softball, and varsity soccer fields over at the high school. So that's where we stand now at the Athletic Ad Hoc Committee.
Mrs. Russell.
When will the ice machine arrive?
I think ultimately it depends on the budget. So,
I mean, it's in next year's budget, so it couldn't be ordered till after July 1st, correct?
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mrs. Arndt?
Just a clarification through the chair to you. You said that that cost analysis is going to be done by whom?
Vernon Public Works.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Stansel?
I'd just like to request that when we get some of those cost estimations in, since we already have a capital non-recurring 5-year plan, that we hold some sort of meeting with the facilities committee and athletic committee representatives so that we can integrate that into the 5-year CNR plan.
Good suggestion, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7.4, discussion regarding feasibility study. Mr. Picaro.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just by way of background, if you can turn to 7.4, the discussion regarding the feasibility study in your packet. There's a scoring rubric there, but we'll get to that in a moment. I did want to provide the board with a very brief review of the timeline leading up to this point in time and the potential next steps as a result of this process. So by way of process, the RFP, as you're aware, was posted on December 11th of last year. The next step in the process was a mandatory pre-bid conference for potential bidders. That occurred on January 7th, at which time there were 14 representatives representing 12 different companies that showed up. And of interest, most of those companies were from architectural and engineering firms. I think there may have been, in the initial read of the RFP by many of these companies, some interest in potential building projects. And obviously, that's not the focus of this particular RFP, and that was revealed as part of the mandatory pre-bid conference. During the next several weeks, up until the point of when the RFP closed, which was on February 11th, we received several additional questions from vendors, which were all posted publicly on our website. And then on February 11th, there was a public bid opening, at which time there were 4 bids that met the requirements for being received successfully. At that point in time, we put together a 9-member review committee. It represented a slice across the district, from elementary to middle school, high school, central office, and the Board of Education. The group was charged with really two basic goals. One, review the proposals and design a scoring rubric, and then the second, as a result of that scoring rubric, make a recommendation to the board, or share the information as a result of that rubric with the board, and the recommendation of the highest scoring bidder. And that's really where we are at this point in time. In quick review, this is a major project, both in the scope of work as well as in the potential outcomes. A lot of work went into the bid with input from the board and with the review committee as well, so we thank them for their time and effort in going through this process. Your attachment this evening represents the scoring rubric. As a result of this process, the recommendation from the review committee, should the board decide to move forward, would be to go with the vendor Malone and McBroom. And they were, again, our highest scoring bidder for the review criteria that's before you this evening. And just to put a number to that, the proposed budget from this particular vendor was $29,950.
Mr. Stanzel.
So I'm appreciative of the work that was done, but I'm a little confused because I don't recall, and it's possible I missed it, us as a board discussing how the committee would be put together that would do this evaluation. I know Mr. Kemp attended some of those meetings, but that was initially at his choice. Who made the decision on how the review committee was going to be put together, and where is any of the supporting information for us?
Through the chair, the review committee was put together from central office, and again, we tried to get a slice across the district, but this is really just the first step in the process of looking at the proposals that were received and looking at them very objectively. The real work comes next in putting together, I think, in order to do this as directed by the board, a very diverse group, not only across the district, but across the town as well, in order to move this forward and to get the data that we need to drive the decisions that I think ultimately need to be made for the district. But this is just the first step in the process, just the review of the proposals that we received. The real work starts moving forward, should the board decide to move forward with it.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I guess then I'm still ultimately confused because it seems like you've picked a firm to go with. Again, I guess I would have liked to have had some of the supporting material to understand the basis for the decision, and I would have thought that we as the board would have had some input into how this committee was formed that did the assessment. I mean, this is a major board initiative that we have. I'm a little stunned that we're this far, and as the board, we're just seeing this, other than Mr. Kemp.
I believe the meeting was during the day. Mr. Kemp was probably the only one available to go at that time, but do you have anything else to add to that, Mr. Carl?
Well, we certainly could go back and look at the proposals, but I think we had an objective process. We followed our protocol for reviewing proposals as any other proposal. As a next step, we could look at having the vendor come in and do a presentation to the board. You know, this is really just the beginning of the process. You know, and I think at this point we need to also look at the budget and figure out how, and if we move forward, how this will be funded as well. But there's plenty of opportunity to bring the particular vendor in before any further negotiations or an official award is made, if that's the purview of the board.
Mrs. Arndt?
Budget was going to be my first question, but I do wonder time frame. If any of those firms that you interviewed offered some kind of a time frame.
Through the chair, we originally included a time frame in the RFP, but we will not be able to adhere to that at this point in time. I think in all reality, we probably would be looking at November, December before we had a final product as we move forward, based on the full scope of the work that needs to be done. And this is a huge project with huge implications, and I think we would need the time. And based upon the proposals that we received, certainly from the highest scoring vendor, it's going to take a lot of data and a lot of meeting with folks, a lot of collaboration, not just with the Board of Ed in the district, but also with the town and the community as well.
So a November time frame would be, those results could be helpful to us for budget for 16-17. Okay. Is there $30,000 in the budget to spend for their work?
There is not at this point. This is an unbudgeted expense, but the timing, I think part of the reason it's on the agenda this evening is to have the board look at that. If this is a priority, if the board so chooses to move forward, that would be something we would need to include in next year's budget in order to fund this expense.
Is that a possibility, Mr. Picaro? I'm not looking for a promise. I'm just asking, is that a possibility? I mean, it would be foolish for the board to say, yes, we want you to do this, to find out that there is no funding.
I think if it's to the chair, if it's a priority for the board and that's the direction you would like to go in, then we would have to look for the funding and find it. I think that's really where we're at, though, is having that discussion. Where does the board want to go with this? What are the next steps? If it is the priority, then we do need to build that into the budget.
How worthwhile do you think this information will be to us for our next budget go-around? The information that this company could provide to us?
Through the chair, extremely valuable.
Okay. Is there a way for, to Mr. Stansel's point, is there a way for regular updates to the board if we're not participating with the process, at least regular updates?
Through the chair, absolutely. I would not see this process moving forward successfully without having the board's full commitment and involvement in this process.
Could you see board members serving on the committee somehow?
Absolutely, through the chair. I think the input is critical.
Mrs. Bush.
Before we go forward, putting money into this, I understand it's extremely valuable. I would like to have them come and give us a presentation. I think that would be extremely important so we see the scope of what's going to be done. So I would definitely say, let's put this off until we get a very good idea of what will be done. And like I said, I'd like to make sure before we spend money like that, when we're making cuts the way we are, I would most definitely want to see the product.
Mr. Stansel.
Through you, Madam Chair, is there any possibility of funding it out of this year's budget?
Through the chair, at this point, I would not be able to say if we would be able to do that. We are closing the fiscal year on May 15th, and after that point in time, we'll have a better indicator of if there may be available funds in that amount to possibly cover the costs in full or part.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kim?
Yes, I didn't expect this level of conversation tonight, but I was just making a few notes here to myself so that I could share with you what I asked the committee to consider. Okay, and I'll just go over my list. It's not complete, I'll bring my complete list next time. But this term here, to determine the future structure of the school system, I don't know what some of these construction companies thought they were getting into when they showed up, but it is not what I had in mind. And I think that's why some of them didn't come back, but certainly that's why others weren't chosen. The whole subject of redistricting, that's one. 2, grade reconfiguration. 3, the transportation flow in and around our schools. 4, our early childhood plans, dreams, desires, whatever they might be. 5, the inclusion of all-day kindergarten, right, as an ongoing permanent facet of our operation. Special ed, adult ed, MOAG. And the impact assessment of alternate educational providers, i.e. magnet schools, charters, or wherever kids may go. Ongoing demographic population analysis like Dr. Prouder did for us over the years, and where they think that's going as far as birth rates and so on. Anything else you feel that you want this committee to look at, speak now or forever hold your peace, let's put it that way. Because in this early stage, we want them to start considering any and all of your concerns.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time to attend these meetings, because having someone there is really important. But what I'd like to also include in that, I really like your list of things, but we have in the past just talked possibly about specializing in certain areas in some of our schools to have the, compete a little bit with the magnet programs. So that would be something else I'd like to see in the study, if that would be something feasible.
You mean the theme concept? Is that what you mean?
Theme concept, correct. And that, if that would be feasible within our district for the size.
Since there remains the possibility of funding being available in this year's budget, just the possibility, I wonder if it would be appropriate to request that Mr. Vaccaro arrange a meeting presentation with Malone and McBroom ASAP, so that the board could ask their questions, get their answers, and be ready to move forward should there be funding in this year's budget. I put that in the form of a motion, I guess.
Second.
Second.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Okay, Mr. Vaccaro, if you can set that up as soon as possible, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Okay, item 7.5, reports from Board of Ed liaisons regarding attendance at organizations and committee meetings. Anybody have anything to report? Mrs. Bush.
I attended the Northeast School PTO meeting, and it was a quick, short meeting with not a lot of attendance, but one of the biggest concerns on some of the PTOs and many of the organizations, you have a group of parents, a central group of parents that do a lot of the work for the organization, and many of them are looking for ways to get more parents involved So I'm going to step on my little soapbox here, and I'm going to say, parents, get involved with your PTOs. They benefit your children and the school tremendously. And I encourage you to become active in your PTOs. Step off soapbox.
Does anybody else have any reports?
I have 3 items. First one is there's a play this Friday over at BCMS at 7 o'clock. The play is titled Alice in Zombieland. Tickets are $5 and they're available at the door. Second one is this Friday and this Saturday at 7 o'clock at RHS at the auditorium. We'll shop for boarders. Pre-buy for the tickets is $8 for adults, $5 for children, and $10 at the door. And lastly, German-American Partnership Program. Rockville High School students returned from their 3-week exchange program this past Saturday. They went over to Frankenberg, Germany. They returned this weekend. This is a great opportunity for these 15 students. Some of the activities they took part in were a visit to Berlin, visit to a concentration camp, also many local landmarks in the Frankenberg and surrounding areas. Frankenberg was the area that they stayed in. They also attended the schools in Frankenberg, shadowing with their partners and doing presentations of different aspects of American life. They all came home with a desire to visit Germany and their partners again in the future. These are the kids that visited us in October. They stayed 3 weeks with different host families, and we had a student with us for 3 weeks. So kids had a good time.
Last Thursday evening, I attended the Cupcake Wars at the high school, and I have to say that was an extremely successful event. They raised $6,300, and I'm not sure exactly what was the MS. That was it. MS.
Breast cancer.
Yes, and the excitement and the enthusiasm in the room was wonderful. The cupcakes were absolutely delicious. I'd like to commend Mr. Rocket on his delicious chocolate cupcake. He did a really great job, and fun was had by all as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any reports? Okay. We will move on to item 7.6, an update on the executive search process for our new superintendent. The process is well underway. Last week, we had 3 focus groups. One was in the morning with the administrators, and 15 of our 18 administrators were there. Then during the day, they had one with the students at the high school, and Mr. Rocket had found students that he thought would be insightful, and our person, Betty, who works for NASDAQ, who was running our search, wrote and said that she thought the students were very insightful and very helpful, so she was very impressed with the students that came and spoke with her at the high school. Then there was also a focus group in the evening, early evening, for our town leaders. Unfortunately, it was very short notice for them, so only 3 were able to come. But there is going to be another opportunity for them to come this week. So she conducted 1 individual interview. And then our next set of focus groups are this Wednesday, one at 10 in the morning, which will be for town leaders again, if they are able to make it. We had wanted to do one with the senior citizens, but unfortunately they were unable to get the information out to their group. So they have been invited to the community focus group, which is going to be on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at BCMS. That's for all parents and any community members that wish to give some input as to what they would like to see in a new superintendent. There also will be a focus group for the faculty and staff Wednesday in the afternoon, I believe from 3 to 4:30. And then there will be a few more individual interviews on that day as well. So after all of the advertisement is already out in several different venues. So the application deadline is May 13th, and we will conduct initial interviews on June 1st and June 2nd. So So the process is moving quickly, but, and there is, I believe the survey on our website, I don't know how many people have responded at this point.
So far, we have 22 responses.
Okay, only 22 people have gone on the website to fill out the survey, so if people can't make it to the focus group, we would certainly encourage them, because the same questions are asked on the survey as at the focus group. If they don't want to go or they don't want to speak in front of people, they feel free to fill out the survey on our website, and all that information will be pulled together so we can make a list of all the different traits that we would like our superintendent to have. Anybody have any questions on that? Mrs. Art?
The only thing I would add is that although board members may be tempted to attend the meeting on the 29th at BCMS for the community, Betty has asked that we not go because we don't want to intimidate, influence, whatever, an honest discussion. So she's asked us not to attend that meeting.
We will be going to welcome
Just to
everybody,
welcome.
and then we'll be exiting. So. Any other questions on that? And we will keep you updated as we move along. Okay, next item on the agenda is our budget reductions, 7.7. Dr. Conley.
Thank you. You have a budget worksheet that reflects the actions that the board took at the last meeting. The board did take something out twice at the last meeting, so we have actually reduced the budget by $656,451. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. McCarr to highlight the actions the board took at the last meeting, and then to move forward from there. Ms. McCarr, please.
Through the chair, to the board, as Dr. Conway had stated, the board had moved at the budget workshop meeting on April 13th to reduce the budget by a total of $656,451. That represents a 0.51% increase over current fiscal year expenditures. A quick highlight of the reductions are actually highlighted in yellow on your budget worksheet. Starting from the top, the unassigned reductions in the amount of $431,858. That number should have been, to reach the $600,000 goal for that evening, $375,407, and that's where, as Dr. Conway had mentioned, the school psychologist was apparently deducted twice. Moving right down the list, there was $131,151.45. That motion was made based on funding from our medical reserve account that we were able to work on with the town. Going down the list, next item is substitute teachers in the amount of $26,010.55. Other supplies and materials, specifically toner, in the amount of $10,980. Those are direct savings as a result of our new copier contract. In addition to additional savings, we've already reduced the budget in our copier line items. School psychologist for $56,451. Also included, as we have done in the past, in the budget worksheets for the board to review, are potential adjustments that were on the table at the last meeting. There's an increase in unemployment compensation of $60,000 should the board decide to move on any recommendations to reduce staff further from the budget. We also have to have a proportional increase in unemployment compensation. You'll also see a potential reduction of $163,311 from the high school that was discussed at the last meeting, BCMS, a reduction of $217,748. Center Road School, reduction of $1,120 from non-instructional equipment. And if you turn your page over, if you have the two-page version, for the next page. General instruction classroom teacher, $53,228, even, which would remain on Alliance District. So again, before you this evening is the board's motions to reduce the budget, but it is in excess of $56,451 from the target provided to us from the town council.
Mr. Stanson?
I have several questions and then a motion. My first question for you, Madam Chair, if we deducted the psychologist twice, doesn't that mean we owe for that rather than get a bonus there? If we deducted the $56,451 twice, then we have to add it back into what we...
That's correct.
Okay, I thought you were saying that we didn't have to. My apologies.
No.
Okay. My second question is for Dr. Conley. Dr. Conley, have we, and I'll be honest, I'm thinking of this from a private enterprise world, have we ever tried to offer things like retirement incentives?
I'm actually unsure of, not in the last 5 years, so I'm unsure of what the board has done prior to that. There are lots of different retirement incentives that can be offered. Our contract does have some retirement incentives. Generally, you want someone to notify you by January 1st so that the board can plan on someone, and you give that as a financial incentive. And our contract does have that as a standard retirement early. It's not early, it's an early notification, a notification bonus, more or less. We don't have anything else. There was a group of people who did have, in the administrator's contract, there was a group of people that did have a very generous retirement bonus, but that list has dwindled to 2 people left, I think, in that, neither of whom are ready to retire. But there are lots of retirement plans out there that the board could certainly offer. It costs you money. I don't know how much it saves you. It certainly doesn't generally, in the long run, save you a lot of money. And probably cost you more.
Sorry, Mr. Kemp,
He's got more questions, Mr. Stansel.
But the
No.
answer,
David, Mr. Stansel has more questions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kemp has a question related to the retirement incentives, and I'm fine with it.
no, it's just, I was trying to answer, yes, the board has in the past put early retirement incentives out there. I thought there were some still in the contract that haven't gone away yet.
Yes, considerable. If you notify by January 1st that you're retiring that year, you get a certain amount of money, either each year for 3 or 4 years, some money off, or new insurance for free. It's quite nice.
Some of the offerings were much more generous, shall we say, in the past, and over the years in some of the negotiations, we decreased the incentive to leave, which had to be negotiated, of course, but I didn't anticipate the question. I could try to elaborate next time after I go back and read it, but the answer is basically, yeah, we have.
All right, so with that said, moving on to a different subject. I understand that, we obviously are in very lean times, and all of us here are doing our best to save teaching positions. We have 7 on the table tonight that's recommended from administration, and I can't stomach doing that without at least trying to save some of them. So I am going to make a motion that the coordinator, facilities manager, CA, Intersports 10 FTE position, which is currently listed as a full-time FTE at $121,362, be reduced to a half-time FTE at $60,681. And I would appreciate a second.
Second.
Discussion, comments?
I just want to say that I understand that as enrollments go down, staffing goes down, that's difficult enough to stomach without adding administrative positions. I think that makes it even worse. So I'm going to support the motion. I don't deny that a full-time AD would be a lovely thing to have, but not at the expense of classroom teachers. So I'm going to support the motion.
I have a question. Was not Steve Phillips of 1.0 FTE?
He was half-time curriculum and half-time AD. So it's 0.5 AD.
Any other questions, Mr. Bull?
For the same reasons mentioned, I'll be supporting this motion because I'd rather see classroom teachers stay in the classroom and do what you gotta do for sports some other time.
I have a question about the individual who is slated for that position, will that person just become a half-time employee?
So that person has the most seniority, so I'm guessing that person will bump into the position that was appointed this evening. That's a guess. I don't know for a fact, but we don't have another half-time administrator job to match up to that administrator job.
Depending on the results of this vote, I have another motion to propose, so I may have that covered.
Oh, okay. I don't want to vote until I know what the other option is.
No.
All right, Mr. Kemp.
Well, Paul, you can't really have your cake and eat it too here now, because I'd like to hear what you have in mind, because I don't see a way to do this unless I know what magic you're going to come up with here. So you're going to have to let the cat out of the bag before I vote.
I'm happy to let the cat out of the bag, but it's not part of this motion. So
That's fine.
The discussion is respectfully on this motion. If we all think it's a good idea to reduce it to half-time, then I think we should do it, and then we can have a discussion on the second position, which I think is going to be far more controversial than the first, and I'd really rather not tie the two together, because respectfully, they're not tied together.
Mr. Kemp?
Well, unfortunately, they are. The motions aren't necessarily tied together, but the reason that you may get a vote to support what you have suggested has to do with, see, the problem is we've just hired an individual here this evening. And if I understand the administration correctly, that's the only place so if you've got an alternative to that, I need to hear it now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to vote against it. In as much as I might have liked to have voted for it. I won't until I know where you want to go.
Mrs. Arndt?
I'm going to suggest that these decisions should not be made based on individuals, that we're talking about positions and cutting budgets, and I think to make a decision about a position based on the people is not the way we should be making these decisions. So I think you look at the motion, which is to reduce the AD to half-time, and if you believe that the system can function for another year, like it has been with a half-time AD, then you support the motion. I don't think it's appropriate to consider individuals.
Well, unfortunately, I do, and since I'll be voting as I see fit, that's the way it's going to be now. I don't know why this has to be so hard. Why don't you share with us what the logic is, and maybe we can go along with it.
Respectfully, Mr. Kemp, you and I have already discussed this, so you know what my logic is.
I'm not really sure, and we really didn't discuss it. You said something to me briefly, and I was trying to pay attention, but I didn't really spend a lot of time hearing what you had to say. So if you were willing to mention it to someone, why wouldn't you do it now anyway? I don't know.
Because I've learned all too well that when you tie a controversial motion to a less controversial motion, then the less controversial motion tends to fail. And I believe that this motion stands alone on its merits.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on the motion that's on the floor? No? All those in favor? 5 carries. All those opposed? I'm sorry, I have to finish that. Anyone abstain? 5. Mr. Stanson?
Now I'll make my second motion. I would like to move that we reduce account 5112, principals and supervisors, at the Loveland Hill School from a full-time to a half-time FTE.
Is there a second for that motion? Discussions? Yes, Mrs. Arndt, I'm sorry. Mrs. Arndt, I'm so sorry. Oh, yes, Mr. Stanson.
So my reasoning for that comes back to a lot of what we discussed at the last board meeting, or the last budget meeting rather, around the duties of that position and the current student population at that school. The athletic director position resides at RHS. The half-time or full-time principal position at Loveland Hill resides at RHS. So from a synergy perspective, it could make sense that one person could fill that role, at least from a logistics perspective. I don't want to cut anyone, but making these 2 half-time cuts to administrative positions potentially saves us 2 classroom teachers. And again, I feel like it's our responsibility to try.
Any other comments? I have to say from everything I've learned about Loveland Hill School, there's been much discussion about having an administrator there all day while the students are there. So I'm not sure that I would agree that a principal could do that job in a half-time capacity.
Just as a question, does the athletic director currently travel during the day? I'm not sure, I'm just honestly asking.
You mean out of the district?
Or even within district, something that would cause them not to be at the building. I don't know, I was just curious.
The athletic director, sorry, thank you, is athletic director at 2 buildings at VCMS, and so does go back and forth, goes to CAS CAIC each season, before and after each season, and for athletic director meetings once a month. So that's probably it.
I'd like to hear, if I could, any thoughts that Dr. Conway would have regarding the leadership of that elementary program at the high school at a halftime position, and how would we support the half that person isn't in the building?
It would then fall to the staff in the particular program. So we have a counselor in the program, we have 3 teachers, we have 3 paras, we have a security person. The program's running very, very well right now. Mrs. Buell can add to that, but I can't imagine it being a part-time administrator and getting the work done. And making sure that the school is, that the kids feel comfortable and taken care of, and that they always know someone's there for them. I think they're really feeling that this year, that their principal is there in their corner.
Just to follow up on that, is there any supervisory concerns with not having a full-time administrator for those other folks that are in that, doing that program during the day?
Right, the high school administration would have to take over. So if there's an issue with a student, the high school administration would have to come in.
I would like to ask, before we vote on this motion, I know all these motions are made on the premise of saving teachers, which I understand. I would just like to get some more clarification or justification for the administration's suggestion of the teachers' cuts and how that will impact our students. So, if you could help us.
Thank you. I'll start at VCMS. It was a reduction of a team in the 7th grade. As you know, the population has continued to go down at the middle school. This would make 7th and 8th grade with approximately 120 students on a team, 120-25 on a team. Mr. Harrison would be adding the world language teachers to each of the teams in grades 7 and 8, so that would bring the number of teachers dealing with those students back up to 5. World language would actually have a longer period of time as opposed to a shorter period of time. He's prepared to do that. He knows what the class sizes are. Right now they're very good. And we anticipate with a world language teacher on the team that they will remain very good. Right now that they're in the low to mid-teens, so 14 to 16, we anticipate that they might go to 18. They're not going to go much higher than that. The high school cuts were based on the requests from the students, and so at this point there is not a need for a world language teacher, even though students have increased their requirements for world language, for a science teacher, and for a social studies teacher. Oh, I got that wrong. Special ed teacher, thank you.
Do you know what the class sizes of those classes might be at the high school? By eliminating
The high school really does not change much because the teachers are increasing their class loads from 5 to 6 classes. And so there should be no change whatsoever. If anything, they'll still go down because of the number of classes that teachers are teaching. So that was how the decisions were made about where they would be.
So I just wanted that information before. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add to this motion, Mr. Khan?
Through the chair, just a point of order for the motions that are being made. At the last meeting, if I recall correctly, I was not here, but reviewing the tape, the motions were made, and the final motion was to have administration make those reductions. So I think what we're doing here, no? Okay, just to put it on the table?
We're going to revisit.
Okay, so we're making assignments to the reduction balance. Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? The motion on the floor is to cut the principal at Loveland Hill School position in half. Right? Mrs. Russell?
I just have one question. The last discussion we had, that administrator was doing the IEPs for the system. How would that work out?
That the administrator is doing that?
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure. It depends on what the load is.
Okay.
Whether she would continue with that work.
But it was a busy load at the time, right?
Pardon?
It's a busy load consistently?
Yes. Oh, yes. We have over 300 special education students. So.
Mr. Kemp?
A few of us would like a 5-minute recess.
All recess, 5-minute recess.
It's the
reconsider, and that's a done deal. And as much as I might have voted yes up to
I have a hard time with mine in 6th grade and the fact that he's almost eye to eye with me.
anyway,
I
suppose now, oh yeah, that's where I was. Enough of this.
Oh yeah, I had an iPhone that switched to a track phone. Of course, we know what to
Actually, they, I was thinking about it,
Which one?
Suckered me in and left me.
I thought about
They might.
This has been a good one. Yeah, they're all released. They were quite nice.
Yeah.
cut the principal at Loveland Middle School in half. Do we have any further discussion on that?
I just want to say again that as distasteful as that is, we came at these budget reductions hoping to save some teaching positions, so not supporting this would mean the cost of a teacher or two. And I just wanted to be clear that was our motivation, is to save teaching positions.
Mr. Holt?
I can't support the reduction of that principal for a couple of reasons. And the primary one is I believe it ultimately will cost us more money because of the program that it's supporting. And if we lose people to outside programs because parents aren't willing to put their kids in that program, it could cost us substantially more money. I mean, we saw that, how much money we have saved for the small number of kids that we have in there currently. And so that's why I can't support this motion.
Mr. Kemp?
I'd like to say that many of our actions in the past have been with the purpose of saving teaching positions. We never expected a final $600,000 to be cut after we came in as low as we did, absorbed the mayor's cuts of $650,000, and then found ourselves with an additional $600,000. All through that, the decisions we made were certainly to consider the retention of as many teachers as possible. And unfortunately, we're in this situation where we're in now. So I think it's unfair to say, unless we support this motion, that we're doing anything well, I'll leave it at that.
Any other comments? Mr. Stenson?
Just a comment that I respectfully disagree that it would ultimately cost us some significant amount of money. We've asked repeatedly, for instance, how it balances out, and we've been told it balances out. I don't know that we've ever been given an exact dollar figure or anything, but if they all suddenly left and went somewhere else, what that would look like. The simple fact is that we just 2 weeks ago had an extensive conversation about this position and the roles and responsibilities. I understand the PBT responsibilities have been added to the table. We just created a full-time position this evening. Is there any possibility that they could absorb that? I ultimately question whether the Loveland Hill School is doing what we wanted of it, which is to actually increase that student base from outside students. And while it may be saving us money, when you look at the support ratio of a full-time administrator for 10 students, if that now, I have to question that. So, thank you.
I know Mrs. Buell's in the audience, and I'm wondering if she could give us an estimate as to what our approximate savings is. And there's a lot of leeway, but approximate savings that we've seen through having these kids in this program at the high school.
Last year, as requested, I monitored the calculations of the savings of that program. And it was approximately $500,000 last year. It is about $480,000 this year. So how I come about that number is for the cost to operate that program divided by 10 students. This year it will soon be 11, but at 10 students is about $48,000 per student, plus the cost of transportation in district, which is a lot less than out of district transportation, versus an out of district placement, which on the low end is easily $65,000, upwards of $75,000, plus transportation can be from $10,000 to $15,000 per child to transport out of district. So, we're talking about a $40,000 to $45,000 placement versus an $85,000 placement, or $50,000 compared to $85,000. So for every student, so if you were to say 30,000 roughly, you know, it just depends on which numbers you want to use, and they vary based on which program they're in. There's a $35,000 difference times 10 children, that's 300 to 350,000 easily. I also would say that it's more than just the money. The quality of programming is far exceeds some of the quality of the programs that I've had students in. They also have access to the Vernon curriculum, your curriculum that we're working on, and also enhances the opportunities for students to participate in district and access least restrictive environments. So the fiscal piece, I know we're talking about this evening, but there are also other impacts.
Thank you. And I do know that you have documented that throughout the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zimmer.
This is one question. Just so I understand, if we talk round numbers, Patty, so the program costs $500,000 and it saves us $500,000, it's a wash, or on top of?
It costs about $500,000 less than that, and we've saved, if we had outplaced that same number of kids, it would have cost an additional $400,000 to $500,000 is how I see it.
So we're spending 5 and saving 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mrs. Good? Thank you. All right. Is our discussion over on this? There's a motion on the floor to cut the Loveland High School, Loveland Hill School principal in half. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion does not carry. Mr. Kalina.
I'd like to make a motion at DCMS to eliminate 4 full-time positions in the teaching ranks, with a sum of $217,748.
Mr. Kalina.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Mrs. Zimmer.
Through you to Mr. Picaro, please. In years past, Mr. Picaro, Board of Education used to run a risk. They used to say, we're going to adopt our budget here and run a risk of a certain dollar amount. Is that feasible to do?
Through the chair, there's always going to be some gap in unknowns, variables in the budget. We call that a risk account, meaning specifically when a position becomes available, how long it takes to hire into it, if there's an unexpected termination or somebody changes employment. So that always does leave some funding in the budget. So the board could choose, as in years past, to build in some level of risk into the budget. So it's really ultimately up to the board to make that decision. We did do that last year, to your point. I believe we put in maybe $16,000 into the budget in the risk account, but I have to check.
Okay. So we would have to reduce the budget to a certain amount that the town has given us, but we wouldn't have to acknowledge where all of that would come from. We could simply say we're going to take a risk of X amount of dollars.
Through the chair, I think should the board decide to go down that road, the amount I think should be defined as in years past.
Yes, no, I just meant, I didn't pick a number.
I wouldn't expect it to be, I think taking the risk of 15 to 16,000 it's a risk. It's not a guarantee, but it's likely that would happen based upon experience.
So we could not, you would not suggest that we take a risk that equals the value of one teacher? That's too much of a risk.
I would not recommend that.
Thank you.
As much as it pains me to think that we would be reducing teachers, I just would like to through you, re-ask Dr. Conway and restate that you felt that Mr. Harris said that the class size would not be impacted and the program would actually not be impacted, but there would be more world language time
available for the students at the middle school.
That is correct. I think he's looking at the glasses half full. He would love to remain the way he is with 9 teams. But he has been thinking about the organization. He knows he has small class sizes. There's 650 children in the building. There were twice that, 20 years ago. And there were 3 teams at each grade level. And so he knows that the class sizes need to come down. And so he's been working on that for a couple of months now in anticipation of what the board would do. So, would he prefer 3? Absolutely. But he's already, and the buildings are being scheduled right now as we speak. You can't wait further into the year to do that. If you give him another team, he'll throw it all out the window and do it again. But that's his anticipation. He believes that the students are going to get more world language. He is going to keep the longer classes that he has been having with those students. So, that's
Okay, any other, Mr. Stenson?
I'm sorry, through you, Madam Chair, could you explain haven't we already cut a world language teacher from VCMS?
We cut one team in.
Yeah, I understand that.
That wasn't a world language teacher, actually, it wasn't, I'm sorry. There was no world language teacher cut at the BCMS.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Mrs. Arndt?
If this is better for students, then why were we still maintaining all those teams?
That's why we are where we are right now. That's why we shared with the board very early in the fall the numbers in the classes so that you would be prepared for budget season for when we were looking at significant reductions. We certainly made significant reductions before the budget came to the board. There were 17, 18 positions gone. We are looking at reducing teachers. And that, to be honest, that would be my question here, is we're looking to save a teacher or 2. I'm all for that. I am a teacher. And so, but I'm not sure of the motivation behind that. If the class requests at the high school do not support those teachers, then they're not needed. And this is something that should have been happening every year. At the elementary level, we look every single year at the class sizes, and so every year we've been able to take 1 or 2 teachers over the past 20 years. At the high school and middle school, it's tougher to look at because people are specialized. And so Mr. Rocket has said these 3 teachers can go because of lack of student course requests. And so and Mr. Harrison as well. He knows what the numbers are. So yes, we could have been doing this for the last 10 years. I agree. That's why I gave you the numbers last fall and requested that we do a feasibility study as well, because our numbers have gone down and we haven't done anything about it, at least at the secondary level.
So your statement about class size perhaps touching 18 and students being better off with their program will happen when we reduce this.
That's correct.
Mr. Stansel?
Just so I'm clear, in the budget, we still have the contingency teacher line item in VCMS. That is not one of the 4 that's being proposed to be cut here?
That is correct. That was a reading teacher.
Well, respectfully, that was originally a teacher at, I believe, Skinner Road, right?
That's correct.
That's then, I mean, we never defined exactly what they were when we moved them up. We moved that FTE up.
May I add to that? I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, I don't mean to interrupt. Mr. Harrison is actually going to use that as a mathematics interventionist as opposed to a reading teacher, so that he will have 2 mathematics interventionists and 2 reading teachers. Right now he has 3 and 1, and so he is looking to switch that up. and make it 2 and 2 so that he can service consistently the 3 grades, and because math does not have enough intervention. So that will be his plan with a contingency teacher. And our other discussion was, in cutting a team, you don't want to cut more support people, so no, he was not looking to do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I think it's time to vote on this motion. All those in favor of eliminating 4 teachers, 1 team at DCMS, in favor? It's unanimous. Oh, no, I'm sorry, all those opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Mr. Holt?
I can make the motion that we take the $1,120 for replacement of non-instructional equipment, that as a reduction, and that we add the $60,000 back for unemployment based on the reductions that we've made.
Is there a second, Mr. Lynn?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to point out that's a compound motion, in my opinion, but you can do that.
It wasn't back to compound.
Mr. Stanton?
Given the half FTE cut, and the fact that that may potentially impact the number of teaching position FTEs that we choose to cut or not cut this evening, how does that impact that $60,000?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again? I didn't get that.
So we cut a half administrator FTE, which may ultimately fund keeping 1 FTE teacher. Is the $60,000 unemployment compensation impacted by that?
There'd still be unemployment for the administrator. That's, they can collect if they're only half-time.
Right, understood. I just want to make sure that that number that we're passing is
I would recommend
encompassing.
changing it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mr. Litton?
I'd like to make a motion to cut $163,311 from the RHS 3.0 FTE line item.
Is there a second? Mr. Polina? Discussion? Suzanne?
Once again, this doesn't have a negative impact on students?
No, these were the choices from Mr. Rocket once the students had made their course requests, and there were not enough requests to support these positions.
So no negative effect on the
Correct.
students?
Correct.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Stansel?
Well, just a comment that sooner or later we do have to account for that $60,681 that we saved by passing the previous motion.
Well, I think the 60,000 was taking into account if all 7 teachers were hired.
No, I'm talking about the half FTE.
The administrator.
Correct.
Mr. Holden?
I guess the question I have is, just because you cut the half administrator, doesn't mean you're cutting that salary, because if that administrator is higher on the salary scale, they can bump the lowest person on the scale, and thus you're going to save at the lowest level 1/2. So you don't get the math that you're thinking. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Conley.
You are correct.
Understood, but respectfully, we still have $55,000. I mean, regardless of the amount, there is still an amount of money that we will have to account for, so.
Mr. Lynn?
Concerning Mr. Hull's answer or question, I don't know how to phrase it. Mr. Giasanti that we just hired as full-time, he might be bumped to a half-time or bumped completely.
Correct.
So theoretically, the gentleman we just hired for a full-time job may not have the job as of the vote we had for the AD.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other, Mrs. Arndt?
I'm just wondering through you, Mr. Vaccaro, if you can tell us where we're at with our reductions now?
Through the chair, to Mrs. Arndt, if the board passes this motion, we will have exceeded the $600,000 by $7,453. So we would have met the total reduction of $600,000 by that amount of money.
Which one?
The school psychologist, our original 431.
I removed that from the equation already from the school psychologist, assuming that that's an unassigned reduction that the board did not want to proceed with.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Stanson?
I'm sorry, just to follow up on that. So that would mean the only item that we have not taken action on this evening would be the Lake Street classroom teacher? Is that why we would?
Yeah. In other words, cutting the administrator kept that kindergarten teacher in our budget as opposed to keeping it in the alliance, right?
Okay, that's one option. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others? All those in favor of the motion on the floor to cut 3 teachers from Rockville High School? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Wood?
The question on the Lake Street position, you were saying that was something that we were going to put back in the alliance, is what the original plan was?
It was an upthought, yes.
Yes, currently it's in the alliance in 14-15, and the proposal was to keep it in alliance. Right now, in your budget proposal, it's in the local funds. And the proposal here for your budget workshop was to leave it in alliance, which would remove it from the local proposal. So right now, it's in local funds in the proposal.
Mr. Stanson?
We're not prevented from still making that as a motion, however, though, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Then I would like to make a motion that we move the general instruction classroom teacher back to alliance money.
Is there a second? No second? No, Mrs. Arndt?
I'll second for the purpose of discussion. I'm not clear about that.
Okay. All right, there's a second. Questions?
My explanation is that our intent was to attempt to save teaching positions. That money, if it's paid for out of alliance, then becomes available to potentially restore an FTE.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Kemp?
Dr. Conway, the alliance funds were going to be spent on something else. Would you share with us at this point in the year what some of those things might be?
This year, to remind you, we did, in addition to the staff, we bought classroom libraries for every classroom in the district. We spent a lot on professional development, on all kinds of books throughout the district, and some technology. Next year, it's the people again, but mostly technology. So the 5-year computer replacement plan that we developed early last fall, the entire plan for the first year is in the Alliance District, so it's 250, even more, I think, 250,000 or more. What else is in there? That's basically the biggest piece of it. There's professional learning in there as well. We're looking to do writer's workshop and a few other things, and that's basically it. I think I sent you a draft today just to look at, because we sent it into the state, their first iteration.
I haven't been able to read it. It's very extensive, and we just received it late this afternoon. I will need a hard copy of that, please.
Okay. Can I ask a question of Mr. Picaro? If we were to approve this motion, where would we be?
We would be, at this point in time, to the chair, $60,681 over the target of the $600,000 reduction.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Mrs. Arndt?
Although I understand the intent of the motion, I've been opposed all along to putting positions into alliance funding that we may end up not being able to fund in the future. So although I appreciate the intent, I can't support the motion because it's pay me now, pay me later.
Mr. Stanton?
I understand, Mrs. Hart, not through you, Madam Chair, sorry. I get it's a philosophical question of pay me now or pay me later. I just think with this budget, we're having to pay so much now that putting it back into Alliance where it already was gives us a little flexibility.
Mr. Kemp?
Point of order, Michelle, if that's your feeling, you could withdraw your second, and that would basically end the conversation. Who seconded the motion?
Okay, I don't know. All right, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, all those in favor of maintaining the kindergarten teacher at Lake Street School in the Alliance District grant? All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, what was the number again? Who was in favor? 1, 2. Mark, are you in favor?
No, I'm sorry.
So, 3 in favor, okay. I'm sorry, I just wasn't getting the count right. And 5 opposed? Is that correct?
Thanks.
4 opposed? 5. 5, that's 5, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Stansel?
If I could request, Mr. Carl, where does that leave us again? I'm sorry.
Sure. To the chair, reductions, the board has made motions to reduce the budget by a total of $442,860, an addition of $60,000 for a total of $382,860 in assigned reductions. The target was $375,407 to meet the council's reduction amount of $600,000, which puts us $7,453 over that target. It leaves our budget at a 0.60% increase over the current fiscal year.
Mr. Stansel?
I'm sorry, I think I'm getting this backwards. So are you saying that we are over by $7,453 and need to cut an additional $7,000?
No, we overcut.
You overcut.
Thank you. So I would like to make a motion that we restore $7,453 to the 2015-2016 Board of Education fiscal budget.
Matt, are you seconding? Discussion, comments? Anyone? Okay, what was the dollar amount exactly? I'm sorry. 7,000? Thank you. And no comments or questions? All those in favor? Unanimous. Mr. Wolf?
I'd like to entertain a potential compound motion just to see what happens here. Just because I know Mr. Kemp loves those compound motions. The potential for reconsidering of the athletic director and moving the monies to for the Lake Street School back to Alliance District would allow us to go forward with that without implications on a teaching position this year. And so I put that in the form of a motion to reconsider the athletic director at full-time and move the Lake Street teaching position of $53,000 back to the Alliance District so that we could continue with that plan to go full-time with the AD.
For a second, Mr. Kent? Discussion? Mr. Stanton?
So, a little hard pressed on this one because you've got half of what I wanted and half of what I didn't want. And, and the impact is, I guess, negligible. My concern ultimately comes down to the fact that somehow we're powerless to set salary scales for specific positions. Because I think if you pulled this room, I don't know that, maybe one of us would, but I don't know that any of us would think that paying $120,000 for a full-time AD is a good idea in this particular climate. So I'm in a conundrum with that one. I respect that you made the motion. I have to think about it though.
I have a process concern about that. It would be basically undoing motions that were passed.
He was on the prevailing side.
Because I was on the
so
prevailing
That's what I
side.
was going to ask. So you were on the prevailing side of both of those motions? Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Linton?
So if we vote yes for this, we're also going to restore Mr. Giasanti's position?
We haven't done anything, Mr. Giasanti.
Yes.
That's a waterfall effect.
Okay, so that's assumed. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to restore the other half to the athletic director and put the Lake Street School kindergarten teacher, keep it in the Alliance District grant. All those in favor? 1, 2, 5, all those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. Motion carries.
I can't believe I didn't
Okay, now where are we, Mr. Picaro? Understood what we just did.
Trying to understand what we just did.
That's what I'm asking.
So through the chair, just for clarification, Mr. Hall, if I may, we restored $60,681 to the athletic director salary. And the Lake Street School position,
53.
Basically, the money that we restored in the budget has to be taken back out of the budget. It's $7,000.
Yeah, I'll make one more motion if you would allow, and that would be to take a risk on the remaining $7,000 difference rather than trying to figure out where to restore it. So I make that a form of motion that difference, which I think is going to be about $7,300 or something like that, put into risk.
How much is that exactly, 7,000? I think it changes a little bit, yeah.
No, it should be the same dollar at the end of the day.
61, 60,631. All right, well, Mr. Hool has made a motion to take a risk on whatever that $7,000 exact amount is. Is there a second on that? Mr. Kleiner? Okay, Mr. Stenson?
Through you, Madam Chair, didn't we decide earlier in the budget process to take some sort of risk? At one point, I know we had.
With contingency, we took 19,000 out of contingency.
Okay, thank you.
But there's still money in it.
Yes. So do we come up with the exact what figure is?
7,000.
7,000 or 7? Even?
6,453.
Come on. You're not going to be
It's the same number.
7,453.
640. Was the AD was 60?
60,681.
630.
631 was the AD?
The athletic director reduction was 60,681.
31. All right, well, okay, so we have a motion on the floor to take the risk of, I'm still not sure the dollar amount. We'll let Michael figure that out.
While he's working on it, can I just make a statement?
Sure.
I agree that paying an administrator to be an AD full-time is quite a large amount. I'd like to see in the future that we look and explore the concept of the athletic director not being an administrative position, and see the way other districts in our area or in the state pay for it as a non-administrative position, and through possible attrition of administrators, we can work that out of our system and have a person in place that, if it's possible, that would not put such a cost burden on our town. Just a statement, not a motion.
Michael, you still working on the math?
To you, Madam Chair, working the numbers backwards, if I understand the motion correctly, I have the same number, 7,453.
I got that too. All right, so the motion on the floor is to take a risk of $7,453. Any discussion, comments? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. One opposed, Mrs. Nice. Okay. Sorry.
I'd like to ask a question about the technology grant that was denied. A couple of them. To me, the worst part of that is we were choosing not to use Alliance dollars to accomplish some of those things that we wanted to accomplish that were not teaching positions, but other things. To me, that would have been one of them. And I'm wondering if that grant, you'll apply again, hopefully figure out what the mistake is and correct it and reapply. What if that grant doesnn't come through? What's plan B?
Okay, respond. It was not our mistake, certainly.
I understand.
It was the State Department's. They must have done something in how they put their RFP out, so we're all in the same boat. We fully expect to put in the same grant with whatever tweak they had to change, and it might not even be something that we'll actually see. But we expect to put in the same grant for all the wireless at all the elementary schools and to move forward with that. We do expect to receive the grant. There's enough funding, or there is enough funding in the pot of money we weren't overly aggressive, but we asked for, I want to say $150,000, $170,000 in that grant, if I recall correctly, and we intend to do that again. So we fully expect to receive it.
Okay.
Okay, now we will move on to item 7.7A, non-renewal of teacher contracts. Dr. Conner.
I would respectfully ask the board to non-renew the contracts of 3 non-tenured teachers. The reason that I will provide them, they know that I will be asking you to do this evening. I've met with each of them, and the principal has met with them. It would be due to loss of position or the elimination of position or loss of position to another teacher. Those 3 teachers are Catherine Palmeter from the middle school, Jessica Ashton from the middle school, and Tracy Brennan from the high school. So I would ask respectfully that you make that motion.
Well,
Make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education non-renew the contracts of the teachers aforementioned by Dr. Conway, effective the conclusion of the 2014-2015 school year.
is there a second? Mr. Linton?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Mr. Stanton? Okay, thank you. Is that it, Dr. Kelly?
That's all, thank you very much.
I'm kind of confused because we cut 7 teachers tonight.
That is correct. We have open positions, other teachers resign and move on or take maternity and don't come back. And so there are open positions. And so the result of 7 positions is the elimination of 3 jobs. The other people have bumped into other positions. It may not be their favorite position, but they do have a job.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stanton?
Through you, Madam Chair, can I request of the administration that we get a full accounting of the positions eliminated in this budget cycle? Just because you mentioned the 17 that were cut prior to us even seeing the budget, and then what we've done, you know, over the various nights, I would really appreciate it if we could get like an accurate picture of what happened with everybody moving around. Thank you.
That would be good. I agree. Okay, move on to item 8.0, to review and update the Board of Education calendar. Does anybody have anything for the calendar? No. 9.0, opportunities for questions from the press. Nothing from the press is here. One thing left. Mr. Wolf.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Mr. Stanton? All those in favor?